All right, looks like we got to adjust our camera here. Give me a second and see if it works. It worked. So we are live, broadcasting live from the spare bedroom, which doubles as my study nowadays, and we are glad to have you with us. This is going to be a good study going on here tonight. We were just listening to. Um, yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and say this. We're listening to a local preacher's program here. Of course, you can watch it worldwide, I guess. But it was Prove All Things, and Brent Bishop had, well, he didn't call in. He had typed in some questions last week, so they were going back over those things. He asked them. Brent asked these guys about um, Daniel chapter 12, and if Daniel 12 was what verses 1 and 2 was the same as Acts 24 and verse 15. They had no clue what Daniel 12 was even talking about. So Trent and I thought, hey, this might be a good, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit. Anyway, just to get started, we were supposed to have Bill Evans with us tonight, and he's not here. So hopefully everything is okay. We'll find out. Maybe he can be with us next week. I don't know. Did you hear anything from him or not yet?
No.
Okay. All right. Other than that, we want to thank you for being with us. We want you to go to our website, westsidecoc.org, and check out lots of good things going on there. There is a, what do you call it? Not a convention. This weekend. Lectureship. There you go. Going on this weekend in South Haven, Michigan at the South Haven Church of Christ. I think it's not. That's the name of a road, isn't it? I can't think of the name of that right off the top of my head. But we'll find it here shortly, and I'll let you know. But it's the Church of Christ in South Haven. But this is going to be great. It's on Revelation. It is. I don't know if they're able to get it live streamed yet or not. I know they were working on that because they did not have internet service there up until today or something like that. Hopefully they'll have that and we can get it live streamed. But otherwise, it'll at least be recorded and it'll be posted. So we've got 12 preachers that will, I think there's 12. Each one has been assigned as a particular section of Revelation. So we're going to go through the entire book of Revelation during these lectures over the course of Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's going to be great. So we'll do the best that we can to get a link out to that and let everybody know about that. Now, the interesting thing about this is actually there is going to be a book that is a commentary. Each preacher was supposed to write a commentary on his section of scripture. So at last mention, this book was about 250, maybe 300 pages long already. And this will be compiled and published after the lectures. So that might be very interesting. It's called the Spirit and Life Lectures. And this is going to be in South Haven, Michigan. So having said that, we've got lots of good things to talk about. I want to jump into.
Is it the Lakeshore Church of Christ?
It's Lakeshore. Yes, that's right. Lakeshore Church of Christ in South Haven, Michigan. Do you have an address there? If you find one.
19,979 M as in Mike, 140 South Haven, Michigan. It's 49090.
Yeah, so check that out. And if you have the opportunity to go up there, whether it's just for the day or for the weekend, you're going to love it. The place is beautiful to begin with. South Haven is definitely a vacation spot. And there are lots of vacation things to do, not to mention the lectures that'll be going on. So this is going to be really good. So make your plans to do that. Okay, so since we got hopefully some of the guys that were on the Prove All Things program just a few moments ago, we're going to help you with some show prep for next week. This way you'll know what Daniel 12 is actually talking about. And the funny thing about this, Trent, before you got here, the visiting preacher, I never caught his name, that was on the show with them, actually answered the question right.
Brian something. With a D or something like that.
I'm not sure. I can't remember what his name was, but I think he's from Tennessee.
Texas,
if I got that right. Or was it Texas?
East Texas, Southeast Texas.
Oh, okay. Well, I got it all messed up then.
Yeah, near Houston somewhere.
Yeah. So anyway, to make a long story short, he actually answered the question correctly, but you know what he did? He said, but that can't be right. Wait a minute. Okay, brother, so here's what you did. You looked at that, you read it for what it was, and then you answered it correctly, and then you had to make it fit to the paradigm that you had. See, that's very typical. When people believe something already, it's just nature for them to protect that rather than see something for the first time. It's harder to see the truth for the first time. Oh, no, wait a minute. I got this messed up. It's easier to believe a lie that you've been told 1,000 times than it is to see the truth for the first time. And that's exactly what was going on there. So let me give a shout out to a few people here that I see. I see Brent, warrior for the faith, there here just a few moments ago. They're doing a great job asking the questions that made them chase their tails. That was awesome. We see, let me look through here quick. Tim Ogles, hey brother. He was able to be with us at worship on Sunday. That was just fantastic. So we were very thankful for that. And I know I'm probably missing several people. But maybe I'm not sure about this, but I'm not going to call them out. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I think I see a couple guys from the program that we were watching a moment ago, to Prove All Things. So here, let's just turn over to Daniel 12. Let's just exegete this verse, and you're certainly welcome to make comments there on the side. And we got to take this from Brent, so we'll do the best that we can here. Okay, so there's Brent. Hey, brother, good to have you.
Hey, hi, John. Hey, I can't keep my mouth shut. I apologize ahead of time.
That's okay. hey, you go ahead and talk.
Like,
I'm gonna go grab my speaker so that we can actually hear. But I'll be just a second. This is just in the other room. Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. I don't know who the preacher was in the green shirt on Prove All Things, but didn't he affirm that Daniel 12 was the same resurrection of Acts 24:15? I believe that's what he said. I think
you are now paired. Enjoy.
Yeah.
There's a question at the end of the show there.
Yeah. And
did you guys hear that?
Yeah. He affirmed that Daniel.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah,
12,
yeah, we got you.
I came in right at the end of it. So
didn't he say that it was the same resurrection?
He did.
And that it was spiritual?
Yeah.
It was spiritual. I couldn't believe that. I really.
So isn't that what we teach?
That is exactly what we teach, and that's exactly what he saw. See, that's what I said just a minute ago.
But I think that he turned around. If it's the same guy, I'm thinking of. I think he turned around and qualified it and said, "Well."
Yeah, and then he turns around and contradicts himself.
Yeah, he backed up on it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like that you and I have a debate going on. I will absolutely fly out there to Indiana and debate any one of those guys at the drop of a hat.
And you could do it.
And get our propositions, and I will face-to-face debate those guys.
Jeff Asher is apparently the name. We just saw this pop up here on the screen. Is apparently the preacher's name, who challenged you to that affirmative, or to the proposition rather. So hey, maybe.
Well, yeah, don't challenge me, because unless you're up to it, I'll take the challenge. I have no problem.
They'll realize very quickly that they've bitten off more than they can chew. Yeah.
Oh, they're going to realize within the first 5 minutes that they should have never challenged me to a debate. I'm going to camp right there at Daniel 12 and Acts 24:15, and I'm going to use what he said against him. I'm going to press the issue. I mean, if these guys want a debate, they've got one. They just have to send me the proposition. We have to grant a proposition, and I'll fly out there, I guess, John.
Yeah.
Well, what
somewhere.
What they'll do? Hey! There's this. right here behind me. We can put you up. But here's what they do, and it's very disingenuous. They say that they'll debate us, but they won't unless it's 100% on their terms. They won't negotiate propositions. It has to be stated their way. They want their amount of time, and it has to be exactly. And you mark my words. If Jeff Asher is good to his word, and he's willing to make good on that with you, as he said, then I'll be surprised. But more than likely, he'll get out of it one way or the other. And it's just what they do. And then they go around bragging and saying, "Oh, we won't debate them," and that kind of thing. So I don't know. We'll see. But it's interesting. You know, maybe it'll come to fruition. I hope it does.
Yeah, so he agrees with us, but then he says that we're basically all wet.
Right.
And I thought that, you know, there was a lot of dead air there when I asked that question. When they finally got to the question, there was a lot of dead air.
Oh, they did.
I don't know if Trent saw that or heard that or not.
No, he got here a little late, just in time to start the show. But they did. Trent, they did not know what to say. I was really kind of surprised about that, especially with the debate that I had with Ron Daly here. That was my argument on Friday night, and you know, we just camped on Daniel 12, and they're really all the only real answer that we got was for Ron to raise his voice and keep repeating the exact same thing that he kept saying. He never answered it.
Well, one of the what they're going to base their argument on is that Paul was a Pharisee, and then he's going to try to distinguish between what the Sadducees and the Pharisees believed as far as resurrection goes. And because Paul avers himself as a Pharisee, so he believed whatever the Pharisees believed on the resurrection, which I don't know that I've ever read anything, and maybe I can't recall it in the Bible, but I don't remember the Pharisees ever declaring a physical, biological body resurrection anywhere. Can you?
Mm.
Well, I don't know if they did or not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So I mean, that's their arguments. I mean, I've heard people scream that before. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
Okay, well, John,
that was
you
good.
guys know more about him than I do. I just wanted to
don't
call
know.
in and see if you heard him say or answer in the affirmative that yes, Daniel 12 is Acts 24, and that it's spiritual in nature. I was blown away. I'm like, okay, he's teaching what we're teaching.
Right.
Or he said he believes what we're teaching.
I think he caught that and then had to back up.
Is it Jeff Asher? Is that who it is?
Jeff Asher, yeah.
I think I.
How far away is he from you, John?
I really don't know. I don't know
I
him.
don't think he's from Indiana at all.
Trent
I think
Trent
he's down
said
in
he
Texas.
thought that he was from Texas. By the way, hi Carolyn. She says hello, John. And Robert Bune is with us. Hey, brother. And Chucky Morgan. All right, is with us. You don't get a. I mean, you'd have to sit and think up a better name than Chucky Morgan. That's pretty good. Let's see. See if we get any more information here. Roy's with us. Teresa Bartley's with us. That's good. Sorry, Teresa. I will get with you. I promise that. I'm sorry. And lots and lots of others. Lisa Crady. Some names I remember here. Scott Russell. And Clifford Anthony Lawson. Thank you all for watching.
So, Brent, so kind of catch me up because I came in like on the last 2 minutes of this thing. I actually came in. I think I saw one comment at the bottom, and then they signed off about 7:58 our time, something like that.
Oh yeah, they wanted to get rid of that subject really fast.
So what was the whole scenario behind this big discussion that led into a challenge for debate?
Well, I forgot about them from last week. They came up in my newsfeed on my Facebook, and I clicked on it. I was home early last Tuesday, so I clicked on it, and it went to this Prove All Things, the live program, and I started asking questions right away, and they were they were dealing with some of my residual questions from last week.
Oh, okay.
Right.
They didn't get to all of them, and so I had forgotten about it until John sent me a text, and I was trying to figure out what he was talking about.
Yeah,
And then he said, "Prove all things," and I went, "Oh, okay." So then I got back on there, and I got back on there late, right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they had answered the questions. I'm going to have to go back and look and listen. But apparently they answered the questions that I had from last week.
What really they didn't. The one preacher who challenged you just said this is ridiculous. It was just really more of a kind of run you down rather than explain why you're wrong, which is sadly that's relatively typical. But we'll see what happens. That's going to be interesting. They really didn't understand what the baptism for the dead was. That they never had anything that was consistent about that.
So let me get this straight. So if he and Jeff Asher debate here in Indianapolis, then I assume that
I missed it.
That
hey, I'm gonna let you guys go and get on with the show. I just wanted to call in and say hi, and I'll see you guys on Friday.
Okay, great. Look forward to it. You have a safe trip, brother.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. By the way, Brent, who was just on the phone with us, is one of the speakers at the lectures, which is why he said he'll see us this weekend. So we're really, really looking forward to that. Yeah, I wish you could go, but yeah, it's the way the cookie crumbled this time, right? Okay, so let's exegete a little bit of this, because I know some of the guys that were watching the other program are kind of antsy about hearing this. Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1, at that time. Okay, so here's the argument that you need to make, and this is the standard argument. At that time would be referring to chapter 11. And what they are saying, and this is their argument, is that this is the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. That Antiochus Epiphanes is the one that Daniel is speaking of that would have destroyed the temple in 168 or something like that. I don't remember. It wasn't the same kind of destruction as the first time in the Babylonian destruction, and certainly not like the destruction of 70. But so here's your argument that's at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Well, you can look at it that way, and you can make the argument that way, but it's not going to hold water, because you're going to have to put these events happening at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. And there's some other things here that we might go through. But so here are the events of Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 that happens at that time. Whatever time this is, it's when these events are going to take place. So let me read this. My New American Standard Bible is what I'm reading. Now at that time, Michael the great prince, who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Okay, so there's the first two verses of Daniel. And he says that essentially there's a time of judgment coming, a time of distress that Jesus talks about in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 21. That will occur such as never had happened before. And Jesus adds, and I think making reference to both Joel and this verse, and adds such as never happened before or ever will again. Now, so let's ask this question. Are you going to place these events at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes? I'm just trying to give you your argument here. So let's do this. If that's the case, then 168 years, or I don't remember the exact time he did this. It was somewhere around there. Before Jesus, you have the resurrection taking place of the just and the unjust, and that's obviously the time that the Lord returns, because it's the resurrection of the just and the unjust. And that is the time when judgment takes place, and the time of a distress that will never happen again. So go ahead and place that at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, because that's your argument. So there you go.
Good point.
You got you got anything? I mean, I'm a little fired up about this. I'm
No.
excited about it.
No, you're doing fine. Doing fine. A good study of Matthew 24, along with Matthew 13, Matthew 16, and then Daniel 7, 9, 11, and 12 would be in order for this.
Oh yeah, no question about it. No.
Jeremiah 31, Isaiah 65, 66, Isaiah 1, all of these things. Genesis, I mean, we can list endless scriptures here on this.
Oh yeah,
It's
Yeah.
talking about the same event.
right. The other passage that I made mention of was Joel chapter 2.
Mhm.
Joel places the same events at the same time, and he says in Joel chapter 2 and verse 2. Now remember, this is what Peter said on the day of Pentecost. These are the things that Joel prophesied. So Joel 2 and verse 2 says, a day of darkness, a day of gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. As the dawn is spread over the mountains, so there is a great and mighty people. There has never been anything like it, and nor will there be again after it, to the years of many generations. So there you go.
Why? Why wouldn't there be? Because, you look at our armies today, and our armies today around the world are some of the most mighty. I mean, they have the weapons that can destroy cities with one bomb. Okay, so why does Daniel say that never was before, and Christ says never was before and will never be again, and Joel says the same thing? That's because it was going to end the nation of Israel and Judah. So therefore, it could never happen again. It's a quick and simple answer to that.
Exactly.
Because people will ask, well, no, you look at this world today, look at the armies today. We have the nuclear bomb, we have the atom bomb, we have all of this stuff, all these nuclear weapons that we can put on a small warhead, but you have to go back and see who it is talking about. So it's the audience relevance thing,
Right.
again, that we mention every week that most people ignore.
Yeah, they definitely ignore that. I have to say this real
They
quick.
ignore them all. They ignore all the time statements.
Look at this. I just noticed that we've got a special guest watching. It's actually my mom. This is her trial run on Facebook, so she actually made it. So that's great. We love having you here, and love having everybody. Okay, so let's go back to Daniel 12, so y'all can get your show prep for next week. Let me move that up a little bit, get it out of the way. Yeah. So if you go back to Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, we've already made mention that Jesus said these were the things that were getting ready to take place. He cites Daniel. Daniel, here's another thing that you need for your
Was Christ talking about Antiochus Epiphanes?
no, no,
He's long dead, almost 200 years.
right, it already passed. Yeah, Antiochus Epiphanes was long gone by the time Jesus gave the Olivet Discourse. So it's
That's right,
impossible
about 200 years.
for it to be Antiochus Epiphanes.
Oh my.
I know. So
You don't understand.
so let's keep looking at a couple things here. So Daniel 12, verses 1 and 2 is the only place in the Old Testament that makes mention of the resurrection of the just and the unjust at the same time. It's the only passage. If there is another one, somebody let me know. But this one is specific. Now, here's something that's critical for those who oppose us to understand. I'm not trying to hide anything from you. Here it is, right out there. This is what we believe. Okay, so Daniel 12, verses 1 and 2 is the only place in the Old Testament that talks about the resurrection of the just and the unjust. And I know somebody on the other program said, well, it's many. Do you really want to go that route? We'll talk about it being many in just a moment. But every passage in the New Testament that refers to the resurrection is referring to Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Would you agree with that?
I believe that.
Yeah, it has to be.
The Bible teaches that.
If there's another resurrection of the just and the unjust that's going to happen at another time, you're going to have to illustrate that. You're going to have to sign a proposition, right?
Yeah, even if you, I don't know if I should be giving this, but even if you cite Matthew 27, that after Christ's resurrection, there arose that many of the graves or the tombs of the saints opened, and they arose and came out of. Didn't say anything about the unjust. So that's not talking about, this is not Daniel 12.
Right. Okay.
So it's got to be one thing, the judgment,
Right.
the resurrection,
Yeah.
the judgment, not a resurrection, but the judgment, the resurrection.
So here's a suggestion. And
I've got a question for you though,
okay.
if you don't mind my interrupting,
No, go ahead.
because I've been perplexed over this for a long time. How did we go from when I was a child, and I don't know, it probably years before that Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, and 20 and 21 were always, in Revelation was talking about the destruction of planet Earth, the cosmos, and the world is going to be destroyed. Christ is going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
The resurrection, all the elements of this judgment, all the things, constituent elements underneath that happens in that. How did we go from that to when people started studying the Bible and they started to see that the New Testament agreed with the Old Testament prophecies, and that it was for that time period and for that world at that time, and then as they start to understand what judgment really is and how the new covenant brings in that judgment that's everlasting, and it's from generation to generation. When did we decide now that Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 20, Luke 17, 21, and parts of Revelation are now talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, and there is another coming? When did that happen?
I'll tell you when it happened. It happened when people started seeing the truth, and they did exactly what the preacher did on the Prove All Things program.
Uh-huh.
He read it. This is. I'm going to guess. He said, well, it's been a long time since I've studied Daniel. I'm going to guess this is the first time he's actually considered what Daniel 12, verses 1 and 2 actually mean. And he read it, and he saw it for exactly what it was, and then guess what he did? He said, no, this doesn't fit what I already know, so I have to explain it away. Of course, he wasn't able to explain it away, but that's what happens. So our brethren have started, and here we're pushing these guys, and we're getting the message out there about the truth. People all the time ask me, well, if this doesn't matter for salvation, which I'm not convinced that it doesn't, by the way, that's a whole other program, but a good and honest heart's going to want to see the truth. And that's why we preach, to preach the truth, no matter what it is, whether it's baptism, the Lord's Supper, anything. So we're preaching the truth, even of eschatology, because it's the truth, and people need to hear that. And there are good and honest hearts that will hear that. So when they start hearing this and they start seeing this, that's exactly what they do. And so now they're starting to say, well, it was a coming of the Lord, just like Ron did in the debate with me.
Representative coming.
Yeah, it's representative coming.
Yeah.
And so what he essentially did in that debate was he made a 1.5 coming, maybe, or that was his second coming, but there's going to be another second coming in the future, in our future. Sorry, guys, but it doesn't work that way. Jesus said in Revelation chapter 1, chapter 22, I'm coming soon. In between that, several times he said, judgment is getting ready to happen. Judgment is happening now. It's getting ready to take place. The harvest is ripe. Well, what's the harvest? Is the harvest at the end of the age? Do you believe that? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider here. So that's why they start seeing these things, and then they can't explain it. So they have to make up something. And you know what that is. That's adding to the Word of God and taking away from it, obviously. Okay, let's see here. Let's do many. Let's do many. Because one of the arguments that I saw, was it here or on the other?
Sleep in the dust of the ground.
Yeah, is about the many. So let's talk about the many. So let's go back to Daniel 12, verse 2. And ready? It says, many of those who sleep in the dust. Okay. Do you really want to use this argument? If the man who made the comment is still watching, I'm just asking this to you. You don't have to comment. But do you really want to use the argument many? Because just based on the English language, you're going to have some real issues to deal with, because that's going to imply that some are resurrected and some are not. Some are resurrected unto life, yet others would be left in the Hadean realm to not be resurrected unto life. Now, how are you going to distinguish which ones get resurrected under the some are resurrected and that others are not? That doesn't flow, that doesn't fit, even in the English language. But I'm going to show you what the many means. You started to say something about many, didn't you?
No, I was just quoting Daniel 2 or 12:2.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't want to steal.
Well, one of the
steal all
arguments
time
too,
here.
they say sleep in the dust of the earth. I mean, that's a clear poetic, or what would you call it, symbolic language for the Hadean realm.
It's a Hebraism.
Yeah, Hebrewism. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah,
that's
that's
how
not a medical condition.
Yeah, it's not a biological physical death that we're
Right.
talking about. It's in reference to the Hadean realm, and the Jews would understand that. The New Testament writers would have
That's right.
understood that, because they would have been taught that.
They thought, they didn't literally think this, but they would often reference Sheol, or the Hadean realm. Sheol, Old Testament; Hadean realm, New Testament. Okay, so they would often reference this as being in the ground, like at the rebellion of Korah. Remember what happened? The earth opened up and swallowed them alive into where? Into Sheol. That's what it says. Well, did they go down into Sheol? Is that the hot place of molten magma in the middle of the earth? That's not the point. This was how they would say that. This is the same language that's being used in John 5 about in the graves, in the dust of the ground, in Sheol, Hadean realm. It's all the same reference.
Yeah, can heaven be a place on earth?
Only if you are the Go-Go's. I think it's the Go-Go's. I don't remember who it was.
I don't know. But no, I mean, we hear that term a lot. So is heaven on earth? No.
Mm-mm.
No, but it can. It's used quite a bit because we understand that type of language.
Right.
So the Jews would have understood the dust of the earth to be the Hadean realm.
Right.
Just like you said, because of the way that the earth would swallow up Korah's rebellion.
Yeah. So those who are sleeping in the dust of the earth are those who, in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, before the Hadean realm was cast into the lake that burns with fire, in Revelation, when you died, you slept in the dust of the ground, or you went to the Hadean realm. That's Romans 5. Death reigned from Adam till Moses. Okay, so we're going to look at the term many in the Hebrew language. In the interlinear, we read that this is, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, would be wirabim, maybe, but either way, I'll bring it up here and show you the definition. Okay, so what does that say? What is the definition of many?
Up here, my eyes are so
right. Just the short definition was really the only definition they have. It's a one word. Yeah, it's a one word definition. I wonder if this would show up on there. Okay, so do you see that there?
It'd be right there.
Right, abundance. So what you're going to see about this when you do a word study on the word is the simple fact that it means abundance. It does not mean, I got to reset that camera. Sorry, guys. Okay, see if it does it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the word means abundance. So you're going to argue that many doesn't mean all. It means the abundance. Okay, so what this is saying then, this is the abundance of those who sleep in the dust will be raised. Now that changes the term a lot when you go from that to many. In Young's literal translation, it reads thus. You ready for this? And the multitude of those sleeping in the dust of the ground do awake. Okay, so then he says that some are gonna that some will rise and some will to life and some to destruction. Well, wait a minute. So how do you determine the ones who get to stay in the Hadean realm and then the others who go onto the eternal destruction or eternal life? How do you determine that? And where is the passage that says that that's a supporting passage? If this is a biblical doctrine, there surely is another supporting passage for what you're saying. Your argument's just going to fall flat. So there you go. That's about the many, at least as far as I see it anyway. Roy makes a great point. Look at Matthew 26:28. What did Jesus say about the many? Trent gets to read it because he's on his way there.
If I can find it.
Yeah, but see, they would never use this argument, never use the same argument for Matthew 26:28, that many doesn't mean all.
What is it?
Matthew 26:28.
48. Yeah, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remissions of sins. Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
apparently it was only shed for some by
Mhm.
that argument. So that just it just doesn't fit. It just does not fit.
Well, it's another one of those deals where people see the English word for what we would consider to be many in our common English language in the United States of America, with the same term that they try to throw until, or the word till, at us, meaning that the Bible teaches in 1 Corinthians 11 that it was only going to last until Christ came. They use it for cessation instead of for what it truly meant.
Right. It's a point of reference.
Like death reigned from Adam to Moses. So did death stop at Moses?
No.
No, people died, right?
People still die.
They still died.
Even though Jesus said, if you believe in me, you will never die. Well, what are they talking about? You see, you're really going to dig a big hole for yourself. Okay,
Well,
so
the problem is that, as you can see, very, very close-minded about our studies. We try to affix when it meets our goals to a 21st century English meaning of the words, and we don't go back and look at. I mentioned this to a minister one time studying with him. I said, when there's a point of contention, and there seems to be many here between the futurist side and the preterist side, that you need to go back to, as far as you can, to the original language that it was written in and try to understand what it meant to that audience it was written to at first, before we can even begin to understand it. And he's like, oh, well, so I got to go to college and learn Hebrew and Greek? The answer obviously is no, but you still, just like I told him, I tried to explain to him, on a point of contention, when you're confused, yes, you need to learn that. You need to go back and research that. That's why we're so confused today in the church. That's why there's many reasons why people are flocking away from the Church of Christ. And this is one of the things, because we sit in our pews and let the minister tell us what we're supposed to believe instead of investigating these things on our own. We're not Bereans at all.
no, and that's sad. You don't have to be a Greek or Hebrew scholar to understand the Bible, but you're going to have to learn some of it, and you're going to have to learn how to use the tools that will show you what the words mean.
Right.
Just as you had to learn the tools to show you what the English words mean, so that you could learn to speak English in a conversive way, you're going to have to do the very same thing when it comes to Bible study. Bible study requires diligence. Diligence is not a casual reading of the scriptures. If you just engage in casually reading the scriptures, you will never get the meaning of what God is trying to convey. It's just not going to happen. So here's what I just did. I just posted here for you all the link to the video that we're talking about. Now, I am not encouraging anyone to act inappropriately or to be mean or anything, but I do want you to check this out. I think that what you're going to see here is very typical of those who do not understand the scriptures. And then when you give them something that is really meaty, even though they may have been preaching for many, many years, they've been Christian for many, many years, and you give them a passage that has some meat to it, they choke on it. And that's exactly what you're going to see take place here, if they leave it up. I hope they will. But so go check that out. And they air right before us on Facebook at, I think it's just on Prove All Things, but you've got the link there, so you'll see it. And I would suggest asking them questions. Let's hold their feet to the fire. I don't mind answering questions with reasonable people. There are some people that are just mean and nasty. They just want to cause problems. That's not right. It's not right to act that way on either side of it. So check that link out. Couple of other things that we can point out for you all for next week's show prep, for the Prove All Things show prep from Daniel 12 is Trent there in verse 6. You want to read that?
Yeah. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, he said, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders?
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah. We'll stop right there, and because we're setting this up, but we have to ask the question. We're taking this as it unfolds as you read this. So, what is the end? This is the question that I would ask.
Mm-hmm.
And what are these wonders? So, for those who are going to say that this was at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, this is the end of the resurrection. Is there going to be another resurrection of the just and the unjust after this resurrection of the just and the unjust? There's only one answer to that. There are not multiple the resurrections.
Right.
Yeah. So you really are going to have to. You're going to have to deal with this.
So here's where people freak out.
Okay.
And this is where they get all bent out of shape, because they've been told and taught erroneously that our body, physical body, biological bodies are going to be pulled back together in the grave, resurrected, and then changed. Then we're going to be raptured into heaven. Okay. So their first mistake is they don't understand resurrection. They don't understand that it's a spiritual resurrection out of the Hadean realm. They don't understand Genesis. And they don't understand Ecclesiastes when it says that, you're going to return to dust from where you came. Okay. And so our bodies return to dust. Okay. Plain and simple. So what's being resurrected is the spirit, because the spirit lives on. And so their mistake in this is they don't understand resurrection. So they get bent out of shape and say, well, wait a minute. Then we're not going to get resurrected, because they've got a false premise to begin with, that their physical body is going to be resurrected. What happens, because when Paul wrote and he said, not all of us shall sleep, but all of us shall be changed. Well, what does he mean by that? Is it true what Tim LaHaye and his folks teach, that Christ is going to come back and we're just going to change right here on those who are alive and going to change, and then we're going to fly to heaven in a rapture? And then there's going to be this, the other things that he teaches about the tribulation and all this other stuff. But but the premise is wrong. It's a spiritual resurrection. So when we die biologically, our bodies give way. Our spirit lives. Without the spirit, the body's dead. So that spirit does not need to be resurrected, because it was resurrected in baptism.
Right.
Okay. So our spirit doesn't go to a place to be resurrected. It goes to be with God. Revelation 14:13. Read that. Tell me what that means.
Well, they're teaching that you're more resurrected, I guess, at a physical bodily resurrection at the end of time, which the Bible never talks about. I need to do something here real quick, just a point of clarification. Joe asks, he says he's been listening for about 15 minutes, still don't know where we stand on Christ's return. Well, let's make it real simple. Jesus said, Matthew chapter 16, verse 27, 28. I'm just going to turn over here and read this because I'm terrible at quoting things. So Matthew 16, verse 27, 28. Jesus said, the Son of Man is about to, your version may not say about to, but that's what it should say. It's the word mellow. But yours might say, like mine, is going to. But let's read it. Let's just read it the way it appears. The Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds. There's not a Christian alive that, especially with a little bit of investigation, that would say that this is not the judgment day. Okay, so what they do is they want to make a dichotomy, or they want to split verse 27, 28. Because verse 28 says, truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So they want to say, well, verse 27 is talking about, here's some more show prep, by the way, guys. Verse 27 is talking about Judgment Day, but then he switches to, guess what? Pentecost. No, there's no switch here. Look at this in is it Luke 19? There is no there's absolutely no transition. If you look at it in Mark's version, there's no transition. It's the same thing. So it's really easy to say, well, it transitions here when you're not really sure how to explain it. See, there's that same thing that we were talking about earlier. Jesus said, I'm going to come back. Some of you will still be alive to see this. How do you get around his words? Well, you have to, a man is going to have to invent some things. He's going to have 3 comings. You know, the first incarnation, the second at the destruction of Jerusalem, and the third at the end of time. We don't see that anywhere in Scripture. Hebrews 9:28 says there was a first and a second, and that's it, from an eschatological standpoint. In other words, things concerning the time of the end. There's only 2. The first at his incarnation, and then the second would be his appearing. Here's parousia, which he was dealing with in the Olivet Discourse in Matthew chapter 24. So that's it. Did Jesus say he was going to return in their lifetime? The answer to that is yes, he did.
Powering off.
Sorry about that. So he said he would return in their lifetime. I've heard lots of explanations of people trying to say otherwise. So let's go back to Daniel chapter 12. Now, Trent read there for us in verse 6, and these men dressed in white, standing at the edges of the river, said, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? Okay, there's a time element here. How long will it be? And then he's making reference to something that's already taking place, or that's already been spoken of as is going to take place. That was verse 1 and 2, the judgment and the resurrection of the just and the unjust. So the question is, when will these things come to an end? When will the fruition of the prophecy come about? That's the question. When will this take place? So verse 7 says, I heard the man dressed in linen who was above the waters of the river, as he raised his right hand and his left toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever and ever, that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. Well, let's stop right there. Here's another, some people call it apocalyptic language. I'm not sure if that's the best terminology, but it works. So here's this language that's figurative. We'll leave it at that. Time, times, and half a times has been widely accepted to be 12s. Okay, 12 months, a year. So you've got a time, which would be 12, times, which would be 2. So there's 24. So 24 and 12 is 36, right?
Yeah.
And then half a time, which would be 6, which equals 42. Now, for all of the questions that this is going to bring up, I'm going to go ahead and say it. 42 months is what it essentially took for the destruction of Jerusalem when we look at it in a historical standpoint.
So about what,
1,290 days.
1,290 days.
1,290 days, right? So you've got this, if my math is right, so you've got this hint, but we don't even need this time, times, and half a times, because listen to what he says. We could completely ignore that and still get the destruction of Jerusalem. He says, as soon as they finish shattering the power of the holy people, all these events, or all of these things, will be completed. So there's the answer to when will the end of these events be? When the power of the holy people is completely shattered. Okay, so now here's the argument you all on the other side of the aisle need to use. This is what I would have argued before if I was smart enough to do it back then, or bold enough, or yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so this is the argument that you're going to use, that the shattering of the power of the holy people, you're going to have to admit that the holy people are the Christians. And I have had many people say, oh, the holy people are the Christians. So really, at the end of time, the gospel is going to be completely shattered.
So I ask these people who say that, because these same people believe that the Jews are going to eventually turn to Christ. These Jews who are in Jerusalem today, or these people who claim to be Jews today, these Armenians who claim to be Jew today, are going to return to God and start worshiping Christ. And all this is so they go from, so they say that we're going to be put into the fold of these Jews, right? Have you heard that?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's being taught on TV left and right. Okay. So now they're saying, because they're back in the corner, no, the power of the holy people must be the Christians, because now they're backed in the corner. They can't admit that it's the Jews. It's the Hebrew nation, right?
Right.
So which one is it? You people who say that it's the Christian people, but claim that the Jews are God's people? Tell us. Show us in Scripture where that is. I'd like to see it. During the writing of Daniel was concerned with the things that were happening with the nation, the Hebrew nation. They're concerned about the year 2018. Has nothing, because it says in it. Well, go ahead. I know where you're going, so go ahead.
No, you're doing good. I'm liking it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Because I know where you're going. I'll just let you continue. You do a better job.
Well, I like what you were saying. You should have just kept on going.
Well, all I was going to say was that Daniel is told to seal up the prophecy, because it was a long time off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was what, in 650 something, maybe
Daniel
680, something like that.
589.
589.
Yeah.
Okay, so
roughly.
Okay, so he said this is for a long time off. Seal it up for a long time. Now, so if it's Antiochus Epiphanes in 160, 170, and that's a long time, which is what, roughly 400 years, maybe, then how can 2,000 years be near when Christ said, don't seal up this prophecy of this book?
It's not. It's impossible.
That's right. So all of a sudden, God can't tell time from the changing of the covenants?
Apparently not.
No. Well, apparently he can't, because everybody screams 2 Peter 3:8 all
or
the
10.
time, and 3:8 and 10.
Yeah. I want to address this. I know this is shifting gears a little bit, but so here's what I want to do. Lee's asking some questions here, and let's just see where this goes. Our paradigm, the popular conception, is that Jesus is going to come back standing on a cloud, and you're going to physically see him. Every eye on the planet will see him physically. That is not what the scriptures say. That's what we read into it. The scriptures say that he will come back. This is Acts chapter 1, 9 through 11. That when his parousia happens, and if you want to say that this is not his parousia in Acts chapter 1, in other words, his second coming, as he described in Matthew 24, then you're going to have, this is going to be pretty rough for you to explain this. So in Acts chapter 1, 9 through 11, after he had said these things, he was lifted up while they were looking on, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And they were gazing intently into the sky while he was going. Behold, 2 men in white clothing stood beside them. They also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into the sky? This Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in just the same way as you have watched him go into heaven. Now, did they watch Jesus go into heaven? The answer to that is yes. But let's look at the account and see what it says. Can you read yours, Trent, out of verse 9?
And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same as mine then.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what you see. The cloud obscured him. Now, don't scoff at this. We have to look at what Jesus said. Jesus said, I am going to come in the glory of my Father. Now, what is the glory of the Father? So just to do this quickly, if you've ever studied much about clouds in the Old Testament, The cloud obscured Yahweh every time. Every time Yahweh appeared, nobody saw him. He was obscured by the cloud. So in the tent of meeting, did anybody see God? No, because the cloud obscured him. The Jews have a word for it. It's called the Shekinah cloud or something like that. And it means it obscured him. Okay, so in the temple, in the Holy of Holies, when the priest would go in to offer the sacrifice, what did Jesus or did God look like? He didn't, because he was obscured. It was a thick cloud. Every time this happens. Now, here's a good illustration of how Jesus is going to come. Let's go to Isaiah. This is a really good biblical illustration, not a random guess or paradigm that we're trying to fit into place, but a biblical illustration in Isaiah chapter 19. Isaiah chapter 19, this is how God came in glory. Ready for this? The oracle concerning Egypt, Isaiah 19, verse 1. Behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and is about to come to Egypt. The idols of Egypt will tremble at his presence. And yes, you're reading this, right? And the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them. And so I will incite Egyptians against Egyptians, and they each will fight against his brother and against each his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. We'll stop right there. Okay, so how did Yahweh come to Egypt? On a cloud, right? So Egypt saw the cloud, or did they even see a cloud? This is a Hebraism. This is how this is just like lying in the dust of the earth. Okay, so this is how they describe things. His presence, he was present before them in this scenario. There's no way around this. But did they see them? No, they did not see him. Was he physically riding on a motorcycle-shaped cloud, or a horse-shaped cloud, or just a cloud-shaped cloud? No. But Jesus said, I'm going to come in the glory of my Father. That was the glory of his Father. So the question of this is, how did Jesus come? This is the same way that you would answer this. Most amillennials, anyway, would answer this the exact same way. We just put it at a different time. You don't see him. You see his presence. Just because the English word presence in your mind conjures up visions of, like Trent is in my presence. I'm right next to him. I can see him physically. That doesn't necessarily mean what this means. Jesus came in the first century. He incited Egyptians against Egyptians. You could actually look at it in a very physical sense. This is something you probably never even heard. Most preachers and elders and theologians in these churches are going to hide this stuff from you. But I want you to look at it. I want you to see that you gotta love doing home-based stuff. Okay, so I want you to see that I just totally lost my place with that. Absolutely, completely. Where was I?
About the clouds.
You know where I was going. Okay. Oh, I know. I was going to talk about Josephus. Josephus and Tacitus and one other, Pliny, maybe, all talk about these things taking place in the sky above Jerusalem.
Eusebius.
And this is repeated throughout history. So many people, this isn't new to us. This is ancient history. It's just been hidden from us because we can't explain this. So how did they see these soldiers in the sky above Jerusalem, in chariots and flaming fire and a sword appearing before above Jerusalem for an entire year, a flaming sword? So anyway, my point about it is I don't need history to tell me about what Jesus said was going to happen. I believe it through faith. History is just a bonus, absolutely. But it's there. How are we going to ignore this? So here's what we have to do. We have to take Jesus at his word. How did he come? He came on the clouds. Did people see him? Probably in one way, definitely in another way. They saw what was taking place. Jesus said, when you see Jerusalem being encircled and being destroyed, know that I'm there. This is when the resurrection is going to take place. this is when judgment
So,
takes place.
and-
That's how they saw it.
Can see mean to understand, perceive?
Perceive. Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think that's what it means.
Okay. I wanted to maybe go back to Daniel for a minute.
Okay.
Because I want to finish this power of the holy people.
Sure.
So here's what you're going to have to do. This is finishing up your show prep for the Prove All Things program next week. And again, go back through the comments, y'all, and look at the program. I posted a link there for that, and you're going to get firsthand information about how the other side sees Daniel 12. They didn't have a clue. They were completely clueless. So I'm trying to help them and trying to clue them in a little bit. Okay. All right. So here in Daniel 12, these events are going to take place at the shattering of the power of the holy people. Go ahead and say that the holy people are the Christians at the end of time. And then what we're going to do is illustrate to you that Jesus said his word would never be destroyed. So you've got yourself a little bit of a problem there. The next verse,
Nor his kingdom.
right? Yeah, exactly. So his kingdom will never be destroyed. His words will never be destroyed. What is the power of the holy people?
What is shattering the power?
Yeah. So
Like if I shatter a window, what happens to it?
it breaks in pieces. It's
Destroy
just
it.
destroyed.
Yeah.
It's no good anymore. So what you're going to actually have to say is that Jesus got it wrong and Daniel got it right if you're going to go with your interpretation of Daniel. That doesn't work. All right, let's keep looking at a couple of these other things. Okay, so Trent, from 8 through the end of the chapter, what would you point out? That, I mean, there's still a bunch here to illustrate that this happens in the first century.
Well, in verse 8, it asks, "What shall be the end of these things?" And Daniel's told, "Go your way, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end." Now, there was a proverb going around Jerusalem about God saying things that were not gonna. We were saying things that were going to happen in a specific time, and they weren't happening according to their understanding. So there was a proverb in the nation that these time statements didn't mean anything, that things continue on, and that's what they were saying in 2 Peter 3. It's what Peter was addressing, these very same things, people saying the same things. And we know that God had enough of that, and you can read this in Ezekiel 12. And you can read what God's answer is there, that says, what is this proverb that I hear, that the days are prolonged and every prophecy fails. So when God was pretty clear on this vision for Daniel, because he's not only talking about this chapter 12, but he's talking about the whole letter or the whole book of Daniel, that the words in these things are sealed up till the end, till the time of the end. Okay.
Not the end of time.
Yeah. That's very important. So that's a key one right there. The time of the end.
Yeah. Look that up, by the way. Go to an interlinear and see what these original words are. It's not the end of time. It's the time of the end. Now, even my New American Standard, I believe, footnotes it there about it being the time of the end. So even those translators understood that.
Yeah. And then, in verse 10, it says, "Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to 1,335 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days." Okay, so where we solve at the time of the end, it's not the end of the time. So when he tells Daniel that you're going to stand in thy lot at the end of the days, he's talking about the end of the days of the Jewish dispensation, or I don't even like that word. The end of the Jewish age.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the New American Standard actually says age instead of
Okay.
days. Yeah.
Okay.
But they footnote it as being days, which it's the same thing. It's just
Well, you hear this
different
term,
perception in
latter
English.
days, last days, and all this. Not all the time does it mean the last days of Jerusalem, but most of them do, and it's in the context.
Yep.
It'll explain that. So there are, we probably do a whole program on this whole chapter again.
Yeah. Well, we've done pretty good with it so far, actually. I thought. But a couple things that I want to point out. Okay, so he says, but the wicked will act wickedly. He says, many will be purged and purified and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly.
They'll continue. Yeah.
Right. So this continues on. Time continues on after these events. So here's what you are seeing. And then by the way, just to kind of skip to the chase here, verse 13, he tells Daniel that he's going to be at the resurrection that started out this chapter. So when is that resurrection going to take place of the just and the unjust? When will Daniel, of one of the prophets, receive his reward, the reward of a prophet? At the end of the age. The end of what age? Or the end of what days? The end of the last days. We are not living in the last days. We are living in the eternal age.
I agree.
But not the last days. The last days happened in the first century, and they ended with the resurrection.
Perfect.
That's why.
Yeah.
We actually got through it in almost an hour. A little bit more.
Yeah, good.
And we certainly could have pointed a whole lot more out. One thing I want to point out, everything in Daniel, from Daniel 1 through Daniel 12, has its culmination by the time the Roman Empire is destroyed. By the time that Roman Empire comes to an end, during the days of the Roman Empire. There's nothing in Daniel that goes beyond that. So you're going to have to become a dispensationalist and say, okay, then the Roman Empire will be reconstituted. The temple's going to be rebuilt, which Yahweh said it would never be rebuilt. Jesus said it would never be rebuilt. There's a lot of things you're going to have to add to this text, and this is not even there. So
yeah, we're making God a liar, and we're making Christ a liar in some of our teachings today in the church, and that's a serious violation.
That's very serious stuff.
Yeah,
very serious. Okay, so we got anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, so I want to say this again. Next week, go to the link. Go to Prove All Things on Facebook. It's also on YouTube, but Facebook's the better option. They start at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's an hour before our show begins. As a matter of fact, originally that's the reason we started this show, was right after theirs, so we could answer some of the things that they were saying back when we did this. Make some comments. Call in.
They're lucky. They get a whole week to prepare.
Yeah. So, we gave them some good show prep, and we'll see what they do with it. I'm very interested to see if they do anything with it. More than likely, I'm going to say they won't even touch it. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if they talk about any of the things that we've talked about here tonight.
Well, if I know people, and I think I know people, they're going to assume the ignorance is there, and they're going to try to explain it away because they know the ignorance of basically. I don't say this in a derogatory manner. If you look up the word ignorance, it means unlearned. People are unlearned about the Bible. They're unlearned about the prophecies and studying. So they're going to, like most people do, they're going to gauge what they say on the basis of the ignorance.
Yeah, ignorance in using the term correctly, not
derogatory.
Yeah, not trying to be mean about it.
Yeah.
It's, in other words,
unlearned.
If you don't have the information in your head, you're ignorant about that. And there's plenty of things I'm ignorant about. I'm no rocket scientist. So
me too. Yeah.
So we all fall into that category.
I'm not. I don't know.
All right.
That's where the people get offended, I guess, at every little thing you say.
Yeah, there are plenty. There are plenty for sure. Okay, so here's what we want to do. We want to encourage you to be back with us next week. We'll be here at the same time at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on my Facebook page. And we want you to share this video. Let people know about what we're talking about. Here's the reason why. Not because we necessarily want views. Of course, we want that. But maybe there's someone out there who can tell us that we're wrong and show us. Up to this point, it's all been the exact same argument. Everybody uses the same argument. We want to know the truth. We're not here to ramrod our beliefs and just say, you know, blah, 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 blah. We're not here to do that. We're here to get down to the bottom of things because we love the truth and we love the Lord, and we would just want to simply do what He says. So go to that link and watch Prove All Things from this week. It's in the comments somewhere, buried way in there. It's Prove All Things. It's the High School Road Church of Christ here in Indianapolis. So if you can't find the link, then you can certainly search it on Facebook. Next week, give them a call. They take live call-ins, so you're welcome to do that, and I encourage you to do that. These guys are teaching something that is false. So if you see the truth, give them a call. I'll be honest with you. I've tried, and they are very disagreeable. They cut you off. They make sound bites that just to make it sound like you're saying something that you never did. And so be careful about that. I'm just warning you. Not exactly the most upright bunch of fellas. They're trying to be Christians. I believe they're trying to defend the Lord. It's just they're questionable. You just got to be honest about it. That's all it is. So give them a call. Write your comments like you were doing here, and see what happens. And I'm going to watch next week and make a few comments myself. Brent Bishop was doing that too, and earnestly contending for the faith, and they did not know how to answer it.
Yeah, I'm going to say something really
Sure.
quick here. Neither John nor I claim to be any kind of a Bible scholar whatsoever. No. I'm not a language scholar either. And when we say that, if we're wrong, tell us we're wrong. Telling us that we're wrong is not explaining why we're wrong. Telling us that this does not mean this does not tell us where we're wrong. But be prepared and be honest about it and engage us so that we can ask you questions, and don't just shotgun approach and throw a bunch of stuff at us and then walk away and laugh, because this is not funny. This is, we laugh on here a little bit about some things, but this is not funny. When you're talking about someone believing something in error and it's affecting their faith, and we understand how this affects people's faith very much. It shakes it for a little while until you begin to understand the whole picture of it. Then you start to relax, start to see why this is true and how it really benefits you today as a Christian.
Yeah.
So just telling us that we're wrong and saying that this doesn't mean that doesn't explain anything to me. I want to know why you believe that, where you get your information from, and what led you to believe that, because that's what we're going to share with you, and hopefully you're going to listen. If you don't want to listen, then don't even try, because I'm not going to pay attention to somebody who's not going to listen to me either.
Yeah, you have to have an open heart about things. So we got plenty of people we can argue with,
Yeah.
If we want to argue with people, hey, we know exactly where to go on Facebook to do it. So we can get plenty of mistreatment on Facebook. All right, so we'll just say this. We love everybody. That's the bottom line. We want to see everybody be saved, but we know that there are some who will reject the truth, but we're going to do our best to stand for the truth and to teach people what is right in as simple a fashion as we possibly can. And I hope that you've seen that tonight. So be with us next week. If you're in the Indianapolis area, come and visit us, 2675 Kentucky Avenue. We are in Indianapolis, Indiana. 46221 is our zip code. And you can reach us reach me through just Messenger here is honestly the best way. So send me a message through Facebook, and I'll do my very best to answer that. I'm not great at this technology stuff and keeping up with all of it, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better at it. And don't forget about the lectures in South Haven at the Lakeshore Church of Christ in South Haven. Now I don't remember the address, but so you want to go and you want to check that out. Hopefully we'll be able to do a live broadcast all weekend. That's a lot of guys preaching, but it's Revelation 1 through 22. And after the conference, there will be a book that is going to be printed. Each one of us had to write a commentary on our assigned portion of Revelation. That's going to be awesome. So keep that in mind, and we will be promoting that and letting everybody know when that all comes about. So that's all I have to say.
All right. So you shall approve by studying. Let's get it done.
Amen. We'll see you next week.